Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off. Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Thank you so much for being with us on this Tuesday morning as we bring you and round up the latest Arsenal news. What we're going to cover off today, we're going to discuss the latest on Martin Odegaard after some reports started to do the rounds yesterday with regards to his future. Now, in terms of his fitness, we're not quite sure what the situation is. Mikel Arteta is due to face the media today, so a little bit later on in a few hours' time, as we record this ahead of the trip to Wolves. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity around his situation then. But this report that I refer to was with regards to his future. Now, I personally wouldn't have given this story too much significance, really. I probably wouldn't have even discussed it had I not had maybe 7 or 8 messages yesterday on the various platforms from listeners asking me what I think about it. Now, we'll come on to sort of break it down a little bit in a minute. The other things we're going to talk about today, FA Cup draw. I mean, it's a pretty good draw, isn't it? Like, let's be honest. The only thing that could have made it any better was if it was at home. But we can't have it all. We take Mansfield and we move. And of course, I want to react to some of the criticism that Mikel Arteta has faced for not opening his car window outside Emirates Stadium and signing someone's shirt. I mean, again, it's one of those things where I'm sort of reluctantly discussing it, but I feel like we kind of have to, given the reaction to it. Great to see so many of you with us in the live chat this morning. I was a little bit late starting the stream because I was waiting for a delivery. It was a really important delivery. Where's Afsar's comment? Another Amazon delivery for Harry. It wasn't an Amazon delivery. It's actually to do with some work that I'm doing this weekend. One of the companies that I work for, they, rather than have you travel in to a studio, which I really like, by the way, they send you some equipment to your home, and they do it by one of those delivery companies, basically, and they give you a slot. And it's always my luck that when I've got something to do and they give me a slot, and I sort of tell them what slot I prefer, they come right at the end of the slot, or they're a little bit late. They were a little bit late today, but it's fine. Not a problem. We got it and we're ready to go. Just a quick heads up before we dive into the stories today. If you haven't done so already and you're a patron, there's a new patron piece that just dropped. Well, you wouldn't have done so already because I literally pressed publish a few minutes before going live. But there's a bit of a deep dive into the idea of Bukayo Saka playing through the middle. I think it's probably the best work I've done on that theory so far. So, yeah, go over and check it out. If you want to become a patron, you can do so via the link in the description. It costs just £3 a month. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee in London these days. And you get at least a couple of bits at the moment of additional content. Plus, you get access to our Discord server, as well as supporting me and getting access to our main pods ad-free as well. So go over, check it out, patreon.com/Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description below. Okay. Let's start working our way through today's stories. It probably won't be the longest episode today because there's a good chance that I'm going to record another episode a little bit later on in the day. So yeah, I'll let you know the details of that as and when it's all confirmed. But let's start with the FA Cup draw, shall we? Arsenal travel to Mansfield Town. Now, as far as FA Cup draws go, I don't think you can really ask much more for much more than this. It's a side that are down in League One. They're not close to the top of League One. They're actually a side that I think I've covered once or twice this season on commentary. So I've seen them a couple of times. Obviously made their name in this season's competition by eliminating Burnley. at Turf Moor at the weekend. I don't know that I want to call this a giant killing because Burnley made changes. Burnley are probably, arguably, I know the table says otherwise, but the weakest team in the division. Then you think about the rotations that they made because obviously the FA Cup doesn't feel like a priority for them. But they also knocked out Sheffield United at Bramall Lane in the round prior, so in the third round. That's quite difficult to do, you know. I'd imagine, and I don't know because I haven't gone back and looked, but I'd imagine that Sheffield United would have made some changes as well, given that it doesn't feel like the FA Cup is a priority for them either. But, you know, they've taken 2 decent scalps, Mansfield Town. So I'm not sitting here and saying, you know, this is going to be a 7-8 niller like some people are. And also, these games away from home, they can be quite tricky just because the surroundings are so different. You know, you're going to go and sit in this tiny little changing room. The facilities aren't going to be great. It's a real humbling experience, I'd imagine, for sort of top-end Premier League footballers. But in terms of the difficulty of the tie overall, I think this is about as good as we could have wanted. And often when you look at the FA Cup draw, right, you look at it and you think it's not just about who we get and the tie that we land. It's also about what else is going on in the draw. And I think actually when you look around the rest of the draw, it's a pretty decent outcome for us there as well. Newcastle versus Manchester City is a good one. That's probably the tie of the round. The best thing about that from an Arsenal perspective is that the game is at St. James's Park. And I feel like the way Newcastle's season is shaping up, right, it looks very, very unlikely that they're going to qualify for the Champions League. It looks very unlikely that they're going to finish in a league position that they deem to be acceptable and that they'll be happy with. And so the cup competitions, obviously they're out of the League Cup. They were eliminated by Manchester City in that semi-final. So there's maybe a bit of a, you know, we want revenge kind of element here when they take on Manchester City. But the cup competitions are going to be really, really important in terms of A, determining how Newcastle's season looks when we zoom out and look back on it. And B, in terms of, you know, just, yeah, the cups are going to be, Eddie Howe's job is what I was going to say. Eddie Howe's job. Lost my trail of thought there. But yeah, I think Eddie Howe is under a bit of pressure at Newcastle. And I think if he doesn't deliver in the cup competitions, and by deliver, I don't mean he has to win them. He got to the semi-finals of one. If he goes far in the FA Cup and they have a respectable campaign in the Champions League, that might be enough for him. That might be enough for Newcastle to take the decision to stick by him. But my point is that the cups become of greater importance to the Toon Army. And I think having Man City at home, that's an interesting tie. Wolves take on Liverpool. Again, I think Liverpool get through that and navigate that. But Wolves away in the cup, which is a palate cleanser for them. We keep talking about palate cleansers lately. I feel like that's a really common phrase in the Arsenal world at the moment. But a palate cleanser for them because they know they're down. Their relegation is all but confirmed back down to the Championship. But if they can turn it on, one-off game at home against Liverpool, you never know. That's a tricky potential banana skin kind of draw for Liverpool, that one. And Chelsea, they go away to Wrexham, which is like the sort of, you know, if you're an American football fan, not American football, American soccer fan, I should say, this is like the dream tie, isn't it? Like plucky little Wrexham. I don't think that's fair to label them that way because of the investment and the advantages that they have over some of the clubs they're competing with. But they're taking on one of the big boys of English football over the last few years. So yeah, interesting tie, really, really interesting tie. And I think it's quite a nice draw for us in that, as I've already said, we've got the tie that we think is probably the easiest one or one of the easiest ones that we could have got. And we're looking at some of the teams that we expect to be there or thereabouts come the end of the competition, and they've got some potential banana skins. Rumble says, you've said that Howe needs a trophy to survive. I didn't say that. I said he doesn't need to win one necessarily, but he needs to have a good run in the cup competitions to offset how poorly he's done in the league. In terms of whether it applies to Mikel, if he doesn't win this season, which is the next part of your comment, Mikel absolutely has to win something this season. He absolutely does. I don't know why we're even having that conversation anymore. You look at the squad we've assembled, you look at the fact that we're in 4 competitions. If we were to end this season potless, that would be a disaster. A disaster. It really, really would. And I'm never going to sit here and say it's as black and white as if you don't do this, you should be sacked, because I acknowledge that football has a lot of nuances. Football's a very, very complex sport where a lot of factors are sort of part of the determination of where things end up and how it goes. But right now, Mikel Arteta not winning a trophy is unthinkable the way this season's going at this moment in time. So, yeah, I know you're trying to get me to sort of leap to Mikel's defense here because I can see that's where you're going with the questioning. But no, he's got to win. He's got to win. Simple as that. Okay, the next story I want to talk about is the story circulating around Martin Odegaard's future. Look, I saw this come up on social media yesterday. I saw it come from one account, and then I saw it sort of regurgitated and it started going around. I think there was one that said that he's open talks with Arsenal about a potential departure in the summer. There was another one that said he's opened talks with Manchester United with regards to a potential summer transfer. If you're getting a little bit more specific, Bayern Munich are said to be in the mix as well, according to these reports. And some of these reports suggest that promises made to him have been broken, with high tension reported between Ødegaard and Arteta in recent weeks. Now, let me just sort of dismantle this story, because first of all, I don't think there's anything in this. Okay. Martin Odegaard's not played as much as he probably would have liked this season for 2 reasons. Number one, he's not been fit enough to do so. He's been missing a lot. We're going to hear an update, hopefully, on his fitness a little bit later on in the day. But reason number one is that he's not been available enough. Reason number two is that at times when he's played, and it's not been the case all the time, but at times he's not played very well. And that's the reality of the situation. And one thing I will say about Martin Odegaard, having had the opportunity to interview him, knowing what I know, hearing what I hear from sort of behind the scenes, etc., he's a very intelligent, humble, and down-to-earth kind of guy. And the reason that Martin Odegaard was viewed as a really strong candidate for the captaincy at the time it was awarded to him was because, yeah, look, he's not Tony Adams and he's not Patrick Vieira. He's not got that intimidating demeanor about him that almost scares people into doing the right things. But he leads by example in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that you can safely say about Martin Odegaard is that he's got the right attitude to football. He's too intelligent a guy to not recognize that when he's playing, he's not playing at the same level that we've seen from him in previous years. Okay. And I think the injuries have impacted his performances, and that's probably something that he tells himself in order to justify the drop-off and to maintain a certain confidence level as an individual. But he's not the type of guy that will be playing badly, be taken out of the team, and be going and banging Mikel Arteta's door down and saying, you promised me that I'd play every single game. I'm the captain, etc., etc. I want to join Manchester United. Who the hell would want to join Manchester United from Arsenal right now? Like who? Let's be honest, right? The clubs are in 2 completely different positions at the moment, okay? Man United have just appointed an interim manager to guide them through to the end of the season because their season up until that point had been yet another problem. And Arsenal are in a position where I've just sat here and said that if we don't win a trophy this season, it will be a complete and utter disaster. So the clubs are in really contrasting positions. There's no comparison between the two. And this idea that Martin Odegaard would start creating a fuss behind the scenes to try and engineer a move to Manchester United, it is your typical online clickbait nonsense. And as I've said, the only reason I'm even bringing this up and discussing it today is because when I logged onto Instagram yesterday, I had about 4 or 5 DMs on there. And then I had about 4 or 5 comments on a Twitter post asking me whether I think Martin Odegaard's out this summer. Can I sit here and rule it out? No, I can't. But I don't I don't see it. I don't see it. And I don't think there's any legs to this story. And I don't think it's something that really we need to give too much credence to. As I've said, I've said what I've said because I felt like it was necessary that we address it because of the noise that's developed around it. But then I always think we've just played a game against Wigan in the FA Cup. It's not the biggest game in terms of talking points and analysis to come out of it. We kind of covered off the Norgard stuff, the Eza stuff, and the Saka in the middle type thing. Beyond that, is there really that much to drill down into with regards to this game? No, there isn't. And so what are people doing? They're looking for something to talk about. And here they've found a report from a very unreliable source, by the way, and tried to turn it into a massive story. So yeah, anyway, we can move on from that one. Look, we're going to take a really short pause. When we come back, we are going to discuss some of the criticism that Mikel Arteta has faced over the last 24 hours with regards to not signing someone's shirt. And we're going to take some of your questions and thoughts from the live chat. So hold fire and throw them in when I ask. And that way I won't miss them. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Don't go anywhere. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off. That's right. Make sure you check out okjersey.com for all your football shirt needs. Go over and have a look. Okay, let's get into this criticism that Mikel's faced over the last sort of 24 hours or so. I'm sure you've all seen the video. If you've seen the Ødegaard reports, you've definitely seen this video, because I would argue this got even more more traction. There's a video of, so for those of you that have been to the Emirates, I know a lot of you listen to us from all over the world and maybe haven't had the opportunity to come to the Emirates Stadium. So for those that do go, just humor me for a minute, just bear with me as I kind of explain the scenario here. Okay, so at the Emirates Stadium there is underground parking. Okay, and what happens is after the game, just in front of the Armory, Arsenal kind of superstore, if you want to call it that, there's the exit to the car park underneath the ground. Now after the game, and it's quite a while after the game, by the time the players and the managers and all that start leaving, the traffic is marshaled in that area. Cars are stopped and held, and the cars in the car park are then given the green light to drive out and join onto the main road. When they join onto the main road, invariably, there are supporters waiting there, in most cases, just to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars and the managers and all that. In some cases, there are people there with autograph books. There are people there with shirts. There are people there with merchandise who are waiting for someone to sign something for them. Yeah, that's what they hope for. So this is what's happened. Mikel Arteta's driven out, and in his car, clearly he's with his wife, and he's got one of his kids in the back of the car. You can see that one of his kids is in the back of the car. Well, there's a kid, I'm assuming that is his kid. So they drive out and they get stuck in traffic because there's always traffic there post-game. And what you've got is this guy who's standing there with an Arsenal shirt, and he's saying, please, Mikel, please, open your windows, sign my shirt, it's for my son, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, this guy is like insisting he won't drop it. Okay. He's doing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And Mikel's sort of like crawling through the traffic. And to be fair to Mikel, he acknowledges him. And he's like, he gives him like one of these, and he's like, basically to say, like, I can't. Okay. And I get where Mikel's coming from, because if you open your window there and this geezer leans into your car and you sign his shirt, then there's going to be a crowd of 40, 50 people that are going to spot that, and they're going to come and they're going to also want the same thing. And then you get stuck and you can't move on and you can't leave. Some people have said he'd be holding up the traffic. For me, it's nothing to do with the traffic. The Arsenal players are told, as is the manager, that they are not to open their windows there for safety and security reasons. When you look at some of the whack job comments that you see online these days, are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that someone who's in the car with his wife and child is advised not to open his window and start signing people's shirts while he's stuck in traffic. When you read some of the vitriol that you see online from faceless accounts, you don't know who's who. I'm not saying that there's a large risk or a huge risk that Mikel Arteta is going to get assaulted. I'm not making it that big of a deal and that big of a drama. But this day and age, you don't know who's who. And I think it's absolutely fine that he hasn't done it. Look, in an ideal world, he winds the window down, he signs the guy's shirt, he makes the guy's day, he winds his window quickly back up before everybody else can gather, and he drives off into the night, and everybody's happy. That's the ideal scenario and the ideal outcome. If I were Mikel Arteta, I probably would have opened my window and signed it. I probably would have done it. But at the same time, it's not something that warrants large-scale criticism for Mikel Arteta. When I go behind the scenes after a match at Emirates Stadium, okay, and I'm doing my interviews, okay, so just to give you guys a bit of insight, you come in from the tunnel, okay, you walk into the tunnel, and then you can go sort of to the right, which is where the dressing rooms are, or you can go to the left, which is where the media rooms are, and there's a load of flash interview rooms. I'm sure lots of you have done the tours, and we're normally situated in one of those flash interview rooms, right? So we can see the players coming down and stuff. Even in that environment where only accredited members of the media are there, Mikel Arteta has someone with him who's in charge of security. So if you've got security inside a very sort of shut off area within the stadium, why would you then, because you obviously feel that that's necessary, why would you then say to the players and the manager, go outside? When you go outside, when you drive out, wind down the window and sign people's shirts. Rumble says fans and media are completely different. So who's more likely to be an unknown quantity? Someone that interviews you every week, that you talk to every week, or someone that's one of thousands and thousands and thousands of people you've got no way of knowing who they are? There's no accountability because you don't know their names, you don't know anything about them. Come on, man. Again, if I were Mikel, I probably would have signed it. But I understand why he didn't. And my point here is not that Mikel was absolutely 100% right to do what he did. Because there's a tiny little part of me that thinks, go on, mate, just make his day. There is a tiny little part of me that feels that. But at the same time, is this a big deal? No, it's not. And I can't believe the level and volume of criticism that Mikel's got as a result of this. If we're going to criticize anybody, for not doing their bit in terms of that player-fan or manager-fan relationship this weekend, look at the Chelsea squad. Walk through that tunnel at Hull City. Bunch of kids standing there waiting to get a glimpse of these superstars, to get a wink, to get a fist bump, to get a high five, a handshake. And the whole squad just walked past them. That, in that environment, is definitely wrong. People on the street knocking on your car window who you don't know from Adam, asking you to open your window while you've got your wife and child in the car to sign something for them. That's very, very different to ignoring a group of kids that were waiting for some kind of acknowledgement. If there's going to be stick and criticism aimed somewhere, it should be there. And again, I'll make the point again. If I were Mikel Arteta, I would have found it really, really difficult. And I do think he found it difficult, actually, when you look at his face, to ignore that and to do what the right thing is. But clearly that's the advice that they've been given. And they've got to adhere to that. And I would challenge, by the way, an Arsenal fan now to find me a video of a current first team player this season on that stretch of road. And anyone that's been there knows what it's like, where it's stop, start until you get towards where the kind of Tollington pub is. I would challenge any of you to find me a video where one of our current players this year, this season, or even last season, wound down his window and gave an autograph. It's not a thing anymore. And Rumble keeps saying, I've seen players stop at the traffic light to sign autographs all the time. Yeah, in years gone by, it happened. Absolutely. In years gone by, it happened. It doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen today. And that's the reality of the situation. Anyway, it's not a massive sort of issue, and it's not one that really needs that much defending. But the more I talk about it, the more I think how silly it is that he's been sort of slated the way he has for taking a decision to prioritize the safety of his family. I would do exactly the same thing in that scenario. Would I find it tough? Yes, I've already said that. Would I buckle to it and take that risk? Maybe I would. Maybe that makes me less of a father than Mikel Arteta. But it's too risky. Look, Diego says, I heard it was instructions from security, rules are rules. Absolutely. And AFC 777 says it's too risky in today's day and age. And that's the point. And it's really sad that we live in that world. And it's really sad that we've got to that point. But actually, I would argue that the reason that there is this wariness and concern about situations like that and what can potentially transpire is in part because of some of the crap that we see online in terms of anonymous people and their threatening comments. And if you have an issue with things like this, maybe think about why we've got to this point. Because the answer is that we've become, completely uncivilized in the way that we go after people, in the way that we hammer people. And when you threaten people, there is a consequence to that. And that's where we've got to. That's where we've got to. We've got to a place where this is the rule. And this is the rule because, in part, of what I've just said. So if you want to be a keyboard warrior, you have to accept the consequences of that. And one of the consequences is that players and managers will be told, don't open your windows and sign autographs for fans. There you go. Okay, let's take another really brief pause. When we come back, we'll take your questions and thoughts from the live chat. So make sure you get them in. We'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you check us out on Patreon. The latest Patreon piece just dropped, half an hour ago now. So once you've finished up here, you can go over and have a listen to that. It's a bit of a deep dive into the idea of Bukayo Saka playing in that more central interior role, whatever you want to call it. Okay, let's take some of your questions and thoughts then, shall we, from the live chat. Lots of people leaping to the defense of Mikel Arteta here, which I like, because I think that the vast majority of us can understand why he did what he did, and why it was the instruction that he did what he did. Arteta in says, family comes before anything or anyone. Don't you agree? Arteta was in the right, in my opinion. Yeah. I think that family does come first. I find it really difficult to navigate situation. Like, I would never be in that position where like there's people waiting outside my car. But when someone asks me for something, my nature is to try and help them. And so if you was to ask me, not me, because no one cares about me, but if I was Mikel Arteta and if I was the Arsenal manager and you was to ask me for my autograph, I find it really hard to just keep looking straight in front and drive off. But I also think, he did the right thing as far as protecting his family goes. Big shout out to Egal, who's in the chat as well. How you doing, mate? He says, I'm good, mate. Thank you. How are you? Afsar says, here we go. What is the actual problem with Ødegaard? He looks weak and he's lost weight. I agree that physically he doesn't look the same. But I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know if there's a good reason for that, if there's something else going on in the background that we're unaware of. It's really, really difficult for me to sort of give you some kind of insight into this, because the truth is I don't know. But does he look less robust physically to me? Yeah. The frequency with which he's picking up injuries is a concern, and is probably a consequence of that as well. But I don't know, Afsar. I really don't know. Someone said in the chat, vegan lifestyle. I don't even know that he's a vegan. Is he a vegan? I don't know. I've got no idea. Let's take this one. Going back to the Arteta thing, I did want to move on from this, but Michael Cooney says it's a child asking him, not a mob. What harm would he be doing to his family? It wasn't a child. Like, have you even seen the video? It was a grown man. saying that the shirt was for his child, but it wasn't a child that was standing at Mikel Arteta's window and repeatedly asking him to open it and sign the shirt. It wasn't a child. And this is the danger when things become like talking points on social media. Some people don't even watch the video, don't even know what it is exactly that we're discussing. And that's where you start to get narratives developing that are just inaccurate and not fair. It wasn't a child. It wasn't a child. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Gam Sola, just on the Ødegaard thing. Do you think fatherhood has been difficult for Ødegaard? Maybe that's a problem. Listen, I'm a dad. I've got 3 children. And I feel exhausted 24 hours a day. And even if I sleep for 8-9 hours, I still wake up knackered because it's a build-up. And I do think that, you know, you change when you become a father. And I do think it becomes really, really difficult to maintain the same energy levels. Okay. But at the same time, I'm not a top level athlete. At the same time, I don't have the help that Martin Odegaard would probably have. You know, I have the help. My wife's amazing and she does pretty much all of it because, you know, I'm the income guy, right? That I'm the one that's bringing home the income. Therefore, my wife is really, really good at, when she can see it getting on top of me and she can see I'm tired, sort of giving me that rest and that respite that I need. Is it fatherhood? Fatherhood changes your life, and some people need longer to adapt to it than others. I'm on my 3rd child now, so I feel like I've been in the trenches for the last 6-7 years. And therefore, I've maybe got used to it, but it is a big dramatic life change. And I would never sit here and say that because he's become a father, that's why he's not playing the same, because I don't know that. But if that were to be a part of it, I wouldn't be surprised, having been through it myself, having lived it, having experienced it, as a lot of you listening or watching this will have also done as well. So yeah, it's a tough one. But I'm very wary of like trying to say this is the reason or that's the reason when I don't really know. In truth, I don't really know. Guys, if you haven't done so already, please hit that like button. I've just had a quick look on the likes, given there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you with us on the pod right now. We are slacking in the likes department. So please do give us a like if you haven't done so already. AFC 777 says, would you go strong for tomorrow's game or keep the likes of Rice, Gabriel and Saka rested for the North London derby? No, I'd play them all. I'd play them all. Every Premier League game counts. Every Premier League game matters. Tottenham Hotspur are down to the bare bones. I think they've got 11 fit senior players at the moment. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that Arsenal deserve a breather. The breather was at the weekend. You know, those that got a break, great. But you got to play 2 games in the space of, what will it be? If we're playing Wednesday night, we'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sorry, so there's 3 days in between. Nah, they got to play. They got to play, as far as I'm concerned. Iceberg UK says, like and subscribe. Come on, you Gooners, and has very, very kindly made a donation to the channel via a super chat. Thank you very much, mate. I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support. Let's take this from Guna Oz, who says, look, I'm just a small YouTuber, and I'm sometimes afraid with how a few of my viewers want to know about my personal life. If I'm Arteta and I'm with my family, I wouldn't open my window. Just to go back to that. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure your YouTube channel's great, mate. Don't play yourself down. But yeah, like I share bits and pieces of my personal life because I feel like that helps build a connection with people. You know, I feel like that helps build a connection with people. Like I remember a couple of weeks ago, was it now, where I was sort of moaning about the fact that I had to get up and go to a kid's party and how they're the worst thing on earth to me. The screaming, the feet smell in the soft play and all the rest of it. And some of you have even gone on to call me Harry Soft Play Symeou since then, right? Which is fine. It's all good banter. But you wouldn't, I've had probably more messages about that than I have had about any football analysis that I've provided over the last however many weeks. So yeah, people, it's nice to have that connection on a personal level as well. But there are boundaries as well. And those boundaries probably wouldn't have to be as solid as they need to be if the world was a different place. And I'm not sitting here trying to be one of those guys like, oh, everybody should sit around in a circle and hold hands and all that. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that people need to be more mindful of their behavior. And if they were, then people wouldn't be as wary as they are in general. And I think, we live in a world where there's enough incident and there's enough threats and there's enough abuse for people to feel wary. And therefore, when we moan about them being guarded and shielded in the way that they go about things, actually, we have to think about what's caused it. Egal says, how much is Ødegaard worth in the market? It's a really tough question. If you'd have asked me going into the season, I'd have probably said, in today's market, and remember last season was an underwhelming season for him. He had injuries last season. I'd have probably said 60 to 65 million. If Victor Gyökeres was worth 65 million or whatever it was that we paid for him there or thereabouts, I would have said Ødegaard off the back of that sort of slightly underwhelming season was probably worth around that. Has it dropped since then because of the little impact that he's had this season? Probably. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a difficult one. Sham says 75 million euros, which would translate to about 67, 68 million pound, I think, off the top of my head. So that's about right. But yeah, I don't know. Lots of people in the chat sort of replicating what I've said. Well, they said it before I said it, so they're not copying me, but as in we're on similar lines in terms of the value. Andy says 65 to 75 mil. Michael says he wouldn't pay 10 quid for him. What a load of nonsense that is. He's the Arsenal captain, for God's sake. Skills Man says 65 to 70. So yeah, there's a few valuations that sort of are aligned. A lot of you are saying that Martin Odegaard's problem is that he's on a vegan diet. Do we know this? Because I've not heard that. But anyway, Andrew says, I'm a big fan of Eze, but with him not looking like a good fit as a direct replacement for what Ødegaard brings to the team, is the onus on Eze to change or the manager to find a solution? I think it's a bit of both. I think the responsibility here is split. I know it sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but I think when you come to Arsenal, your role changes. There's no way in the world that any role that you might have had at Crystal Palace can be comparable with the one that you would be expected to fulfill when you join a club of Arsenal's size and stature. So there has to be some adaptation from Emirates Eze. What that adaptation looks like is dependent on both sides. Where was Eze in the first place? What does he need to do to get to where he needs to be to work in this team? But the thing I'd always say is that in a team like Arsenal, where the collective is really strong, where the unit is really strong, where we're sitting pretty in the Premier League, in the Champions League, we're in the FA Cup 5th round, probably going to go to the 6th round, we're in the final of the League Cup. I'd imagine it's really difficult as a player to kick up a stink about the way the manager is managing the group when you are in the position that we're in today. And so under these circumstances, I think the onus is probably more so on the player. I think my frustration with Eze is that I just want him to be a bit more proactive. And I've said this many times before, so I don't want to repeat myself. But I do feel like at times he's a bit passive. And I said something after the Wigan game where I feel like at times he moves around the pitch almost a little bit nonchalantly. Like he moves around the pitch in a way that gives you the impression that maybe he's not trying as hard as he could be. And I've seen that many times over the years with various different players. A really great example of that is Dimitar Berbatov. I remember how people used to talk about Dimitar Berbatov, and I used to think, this guy is supremely talented. He's a really top footballer. Get off his back. What? Because he doesn't sprint around like a madman all the time. And so the perception can be different to the reality. But I think in Eze's case, the talent is there. There's no question about that. The desire to succeed at Arsenal is there. What we just need from him now is to be a little bit more aggressive, not in terms of tackles and stuff, but in terms of the way he tries to impose his game on our team when he's in the group. And yeah, there's various things that I think he needs to be doing. But I think at this moment in time, because of the team's position, I think that you've got to say that more of that onus is on Eberechi than it is on Mikel. But yeah, that's just my opinion on it. Let's take one or two more. Afsar on the Saka thing, and just another plug for the Patreon piece we just released. It is on this subject. He says, do you see Saka moving more central than playing on the wing because he's lost that bit of explosive pace? A lot of people say this. Like, he came on against Brentford, Bukayo Saka, and he looked miles off of the fitness level that was necessary. So actually playing some minutes against Wigan at the weekend probably done him some good in that sense. I'm not ready to say that he's lost that explosive pace. But I do think him moving inside could work, and for the reasons that I've explained in the Patreon pod. Go over and check it out. Let's roll on. Oh my God, people are still stuck on the autograph thing. For God's sake. Arteta in says, are you hyped for Dalman's return? Yeah, look, Dalman is a really really exciting footballer, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see him back in the picture because I really enjoy watching him play. Every time I've watched him, I've always been sort of gripped by his dribbling ability and all the rest of it. Yeah, I think fantastic. Fantastic young footballer, and hopefully he plays a role between now and the end of the season. Just going to pick out one or two more. I'm just scrolling through. I'm trying to find stuff that isn't too similar to what we've already discussed and covered. Okay, let's take this one from Fuad. H, are you worried about the mindset of this team? I'm not going to call it bottling, but they have the susceptibility to crack when the major part of the season starts to kick in. I'm fearful it will happen. I think it is completely natural to be fearful of that until you see something that tells you otherwise. So until you see Arsenal get over the line, until you see Arsenal achieve these things, there's always going to be that. You're always going to wonder whether they've got the minerals to do it. But in terms of what's gone wrong in previous years, so if we think about it, if we break it down, last year, I think we were absolutely killed by injuries. This year, we've got a squad that should better cope with that. So that should give you some encouragement. If you go back to the year before, in the second half of the season, the business part of the season, we won 16 of our 18 last Premier League games. In any other year, that wins you the title. But it didn't, because Manchester City were that bit more outstanding than we were. So I think I get where you're coming from, Fuad. For me, in my head, I've got to compute why I think it was the case that we cracked, capitulated, however you want to put it, bottled it, as some people would put it. I think you've got to think about the reasons why. And then you've got to think about whether or not we have now the tools in place to prevent those issues being sort of defining for us. Does that make sense? I'm becoming very analytical in my thinking the older I get. Let's move on through the chat. Just having a look. Zemis says, are you concerned about the guys wanting too many touches in front of goal? I was looking at some videos of Vinicius Jr. and how he scores, and it was like a one-time shot. Yeah, I think when you're in crowded areas, if you can create the scenario where a one-touch finish is sort of the way to go, then I think you stand a greater chance of, because look, if a one-touch finish is all that's required, it means the quality of the chance is better. Does that make sense? And therefore, it means the pass is better, the layoff is better. For you to run onto a ball as a forward, as a ball striker, if you feel like you can hit it first time, it generally means that the pass that was laid on was of a higher quality and a higher caliber. And therefore, you can then produce that one-touch finish. I saw a goal the other day when I was covering Sheffield Wednesday against Millwall. It was Macaulay Langstaff's goal. It was Millwall's second goal that put them in front. And there was a really good run down the right from Femi Aziz. And he delivers this cross in towards the near post. And Macaulay Langstaff is off balance when he hits it. It's completely off balance. But such is the the accuracy and the weight of the pass, that Langstaff knows that he's falling over, but all he has to do is make sure that he gets it on target because the quality of the cross is so good. And in doing that, he beats the goalkeeper. So I guess my point here is that if we're taking extra touches, a lot of the time it's because the quality of the pass wasn't good enough, the tee up wasn't good enough. Sometimes it can be a lack of confidence as well. Sometimes there will be opportunities to hit the thing first time that you pass up because you don't feel, as confident as you could be or should be, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's an interesting point. Andy says Harry greybeard soon. Yeah, there's a few greys creeping into it. There is. I've plucked a couple of them out just to not look older than I already do. But hey, it is what it is. Older or wiser, I suppose you can put it or spin it any way you want. Look, I'm going to wrap up there for today. We've been going for 45 minutes. Thank you all so much for your amazing listenership, support. Remember, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/the Chronicles of Laguna. The link's in the description below. There's a new Patreon piece that just dropped on that Saka debate and on that discussion. I didn't really want to labor the point too much about Arteta not signing an autograph, but I felt like the chat sucked me into talking about it for a lot longer than I wanted to. But it's clearly something that has sparked quite a reaction. I'm not sure why, but it has. Therefore, it's our duty on this podcast to cover it. Right. I will see you all on, I was going to say Wednesday's episode. There's a possibility that I might bring you a second very short episode a little bit later on today. But if not, I'll see you on Wednesday morning for our preview of the trip to Wolves. We'll talk about the 11. We'll talk about the team. We should have heard from Mikel Arteta by then as well. So there's loads and loads and loads that we're going to be sort of drilling into on that episode ahead of another big game for the Gunners. Everybody's kind of talking about the North London derby, and fine. I beg your pardon. Obviously, the North London derby's important and all that. But first, we got to take care of Wolves. We got to take care of business at Molineux first. Would be my point on that. Thank you all so much. I'll catch you all very, very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Chronicles of Laguna. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of Laguna. Harry Symeou time. Come on, you Gunners.